Hello guys, and welcome to lesson 30 where we're going to continue looking at flexibility, but the focus now is on vocabulary, not grammar. So we're going to be constructing sentences, we're using verbs, gerunds and nouns and looking at the differences between those constructions. Okay, over the last two lessons we've looked at how grammar, both the forms and the discussion between the active and the passive, allows us to create a different effect from our writing, something we need to pay attention to given the wider context and the message we want to communicate and hopefully the way that it would be understood. Classes of vocabulary, whether it's a verb, a gerund or a noun, allows us to do exactly the same thing, create a different effect. But because the difference between using a verb, a gerund and a noun is that much greater, you'll see that in a second, those effects or the differences between those effects are that much more obvious as well. And that's something that we've really got to pay attention to. The end result is by being aware of these different classes and using them carefully, it gives us the skills to choose our message carefully. So just as I said in the previous video with the active and the passive, draft your message in three different ways. Draft your message using the verb, draft your message using the gerund, draft your message using nouns. And ask yourself, which would be the best message for this particular context? Which message would work best for the reader? Which message would present me in the best possible way? So it gives us the chance to think about us as the writer, the reader, what do they want, and the context. It's about painting the correct picture. And I know it's beginning to sound like a cliche because I keep on saying that in every single lesson, but because the differences are that much more noticeable, then it allows us to see those pictures or the differences between those pictures, between a masterpiece, an average painting and a monstrosity in a much easier way. Okay, enough of the chit chat. Let's go on to an example and hopefully you'll be able to see this. So I'm going to choose a message using a stem verb, which is to inform our clients. So the first message using the verb as a form of vocabulary is we informed our clients. This is, as I've argued before, for the active voice, it's a clear, strong message. It identifies everyone involved. The reader understands the whole picture. It's great for communicating all of the information. And of course, you might decide to use the passive voice. Our clients were informed, so we've got the past participle there. It's still a verb form, and I want you to think about that verb as a piece of vocabulary. But active and passive, I'll leave that to the previous video. But we might decide to use a gerund instead. So the gerund form of inform is informing. So then we have to create a different structure. This then becomes the informing of our clients. Here you can see now what I meant when I said different pictures, because we informed our clients and our clients were informed. Those two pictures quite similar. Some might say that they were exactly the same. Some people might say that they were quite a little bit more distant. But in general, they are quite similar. But these two structures and these two pieces of vocabulary are way apart. So we informed our clients is just different to the informing of our clients, not just visually, but in the effect that it has. So informing is a gerund, it's a noun, but that noun communicates an activity, it communicates a process. It has this kind of passive nature about it. So many people would choose the gerund and then include extra information. So the informing of our clients was done by something, something, something. Now the criticism of that would be some people would say that that's just too wordy. We don't need to use that many words when the alternative, which is we informed our clients, is much more punchier, straight to the point, and much better at communicating what is essentially the same message. But the gerund, as I said, it focuses on an action, a process. So there is a reason for using that piece of vocabulary. We might decide to use a noun. Now, the noun from inform was information. Now, if we're going to use information as a noun, we've got to use a supporting verb. Some people would call this a weak verb because that verb doesn't communicate the message. So we would have to say, for example, we have given our clients information, or our clients have been given information, or we might decide to use a more legalistic, horrible verb. We have provided our clients information. Our clients have been provided with information. So you can see now, by using the noun, it means that we have to change the structure again. We have to use other supporting verbs. A different picture has been created. But here the focus is on information as a noun. It is a thing. And we might choose this option because information in that context is a thing which could be given between people. So that context, that reason, that rationale would allow us to choose this option instead of, for example, we informed our clients. Now, this is a decision for you as a writer. You've really got to ask yourself that question. Do I really want to say that information is a thing, or is it sufficient for me to say we informed our clients? Now, it has to be decided on a case-by-case basis, but one example of bad writing is where we are focusing on nouns all of the time, and particularly these eon nouns. So information, and now my mind has gone blank, of course, but there are many, many verbs out there which end in eon. Confirmation, reservation, there we go, we've got a few more coming back. Evasion, many of these nouns which perhaps, when we think about it, really should be verbs instead. But that, I think we covered that in lessons 3 and 4 when we're talking about nominalizations. I think that's where we find that discussion. So if you want to find out more about that, then please go out and check out lessons 3 and 4. Oh, and I just remembered to tell you one extra thing, so let me add this in. One comment about gerunds and one comment about nouns. With gerunds, as you can see in this case, we have to introduce a preposition, which is of, so the informing of our clients. Very often after gerunds, you have to say of the. And if you use lots of gerunds, you then have to say of the. This is not the best writing style, and if you do this a lot in your document, I've said this in a previous video, where you just use prepositions unnecessarily, this doesn't reflect very well on your writing or indeed yourself. So that's a good thing to practice vocabulary flexibility to avoid this bad style of saying of the after gerunds all of the time. And secondly, as regards using nouns, in my opinion, our clients have been given information is the same as we informed our clients. But there could be cases where you have to choose another verb, because when you're using a noun, you have to use a verb. Sometimes you use another strong verb, and then that changes the message. So, for example, we delivered information to our clients is a different message to we informed our clients. Some would say it means the same thing. I would say it doesn't. I would say that there is a difference now between those two messages. We delivered something to the clients is different to we informed our clients, because delivering, the process of delivering, the verb, the action of delivering is different to simply just informing. So sometimes when you have to use a noun, you have to use the verb, and that verb then changes the meaning of the message. So that's something that I just want you to bear in mind. So what are the teaching points? Flexibility gives us options. We communicate for a reason. We have to understand that reason to choose the vocabulary we need to use to communicate. A verb might be what we need. A gerund might be what we need. A noun might be what we need. And when we decide what we need, that then gives us our structures. That then gives us the paintings, the pictures that we want to paint. Careful use of these rules can achieve different effects. I'm not going to go into detail in this video here, but there is an argument to suggest that there is a nuance between communicating one message but using a noun instead of using a verb, using a gerund instead of using a noun, and so on. There is a very, very nuanced discussion there, but perhaps we'll come back to that in a future video. We have to, as I said just a few seconds ago, we have to know which effect we want. We have to be able to identify the effect we have to be able to identify if that is the effect our writing is communicating. We can't just say, I'm going to write something down and send it to a client and be happy with that. As I said in the last video with the active and the passive, this is a lazy argument. It means that as a writer, you are not thinking about your writing in the correct way. Just thinking I'm going to write down anything and it will do is never going to be successful writing. We have to understand why we're writing, the effect we want to achieve, and is our writing going to achieve that effect. Each form is applicable in writing. Different contexts need different approaches. I want you to bear in mind, however, that there is a preference for plainer and more communicative writing, better writing, to prefer verbs over nouns. If you have a look at the literature which is out there for professional, the best writing, how to improve your writing, professional writing, many of my videos that I've done, I've said prefer active voice over using nouns. So there is that preference, but there are, of course, different reasons for using different classes of vocabulary. And just as it's good to practice and flex your grammar muscles, it's good to flex your vocabulary muscles as well. Come up with different forms. Get out of your usual habits of communicating the same messages. Test yourselves. Develop your skills and see how you can be communicating differently, perhaps even better, by using different classes of vocabulary. Okay guys, time for questions. What I'd like you to do is I'd like you to read each basic sentence below, write 3 alternatives using the verb, gerund or noun, and think about the differences in those messages. And once again, I've tried to use language which you would use in a legal or business English context, so hopefully these are verbs, these STEM verbs, you're using them on a daily basis. So hopefully you'll be able to see and think about, if I write my message in a slightly different way, what effect would that achieve? Do I feel comfortable doing that? Do I know how to do that? And so the aim of this exercise is really just to push your skills, and hopefully give you realistic vocabulary to use to make you think differently about your writing. So for an example, I'm going to give you a sentence like this: we to inform our clients, and then come up with alternatives. We informed our clients, the informing of our clients, we have given our clients information. If you want to download these questions, and you can do if you're watching this video on Patreon, if you're watching this video on YouTube, LinkedIn or on Facebook, then please think about joining me on Patreon, where you'll get access to all of my materials. You can download these questions, and once you do them, please check out my answer video.